Namaskar, I'm Dr. Renita Mazumdar. This is my continuing lecture on feminist theory. We said that there is no such thing as feminism, it's feminisms or feminist theories. And we are building up to what is feminist theory, genocide, and then I will apply it to Hindu genocide. Now, we talked about liberal feminism, we talked about Marx and Marxist feminism. We are going to talk about now one socialist feminist who is the most famous, Simone de Beauvoir. So in order to talk about her theory very briefly, because she has written a lot and we can't go over all of this, I have to introduce a couple of other thinkers before going into her theory, how she conceives of women. I'll start with the first chapter of her groundbreaking book, The Second Sex, which was published in 1949. The first chapter, she starts by asking, who is a woman? Before we even go into feminist theory, the central subject matter of feminist theory is woman. And our question is, who is a woman? And in order to answer that question, she goes through different categories. Is she a biological entity? Is she a cultural entity? And ultimately she ends up with the definition that woman is the other, not the other of this or that culture, but the other of every culture. And she brings in master-slave dialectics of Hegel to show that she's the other. It is on her body that the entire culture is built. How does she arrive at this theory? In order to show that, let us talk about two anthropologists in France. The first is Marcel Mauss and the second is his student Levi Strauss. Marcel Mauss wrote a book, The Gift, where he did a lot of research on the Native Americans and the South American tribes. And he showed that in the absence of a state, how do people with disparate interests live together? In modern nations, there is a very strong state. People have different interests. Like in India, there are so many different languages, different religions, and so forth. The state holds them all together. But in the absence of a state, in pre-state societies, how did they survive without continuous war? And Marcel Mauss brought in the idea of a gift giving. There was continuous gift exchange. X gives Y some gift and Y gives back X some gifts. So there's a continuous market. For example, tribe X gives Y, say, 10 bags of rice, and Y gives back 15 bags of yams. This also establishes a market. In the absence of this gift giving, there would be war. So the other side of gift is war. Taking this clue, his student Levi Strauss gave us a theory which is very interesting, from which Simone de Beauvoir gets her theory of woman as the other of culture. He says, yes, there is continuous gift-giving in tribal culture in pre-state societies. Even when there is the state, in many nations which are developing nations, there are small tribes who really abide by their own customary laws and not the state uniform laws given by the state. Levi Strauss said that it is true there's continuous gift giving. I give you 10 bags of rice, you give me 2 bags of yam. And the balance, if yams are more costly, then I can give you less yams. A market is built. But then he also questioned this rice and these yams, they will be consumed and they will be get over. So for a while I establish a relationship with you because I have to communicate, I have to exchange with you, I have to create a market with you. But what if the consumer items that you give me and I give you, they're all consumed? After that, will the war start? No, the war won't start. And then he said that is because there is a permanent commodity of exchange that was introduced. And what is that permanent commodity of interest? He said woman. In order to understand this, let us go back a little bit and do a little bit of Freud here. Freud, in his book Totem and Taboo, said that in some primitive past, the father kept all the women to himself. Then the brothers rose up in revolt. All these are metaphorical, like mythology is metaphorical. We have to understand the idea behind it. The brothers rose up in revolt, killed the father, and in the last totemic meal, one can call it the Last Supper, they ate father's body and drank his blood and made a vow that they will not enjoy any woman, none of them. They will transact the woman, and they'll bring women from other tribe. This is the first universal law. What is the law? It's not a state law. It's the law of the prohibition of incest. Because if there is incest, there is no exchange. And if there is no market, then there is no intertribal alliance. So they started exchanging women. I give you my sister, you give me your daughter. This is what marriage is. Marriage is not between a man and a woman. That's a very modern concept. We'll come to that later. But it's for the establishment of intertribal alliance. So let's look at this. See, this is the tribe 1 and tribe 2. And the commodity of exchange that established blood relation, kinship relation. This happened amongst, we'll see that in older Indian tribes. Draupadi was married to create an alliance between Panchal and the Pandavas so that they can defeat the Kauravas, etc. So this is a system of exchange. This is very important to establish the kinship bondage. Here, Levi Strauss will say women do not own the phallus, but they carry the phallus from one tribe to another. That's why if a woman betrays, then it's an honor is betrayed by the woman of her own tribe. So this is what marriage is. And Levi Strauss says that human beings stepped from subhuman culture to human culture, from nature to culture, when they started exchanging women. That is when marriage became a universal institution, together with the prohibition of incest, which is the fundamental desire. We talked about Freud on that. Now, this is where Simone de Beauvoir gets her definition. She says, no, woman is not a biological being. She's more a cultural being. And this culture is universal. See, so she's making it universal, patriarchy universal, but culturally, not biologically. She's the other. Other of what? In Marx, we see that the proletariat is the other here, because there was no such thing as a working class before the industrial capitalism. So the contradiction between the bourgeois and the proletariat started here in the capitalist state. The serfs were the others in feudal state, and so forth. And who is the other changes from historical stage in different historical stages. But with women, it's different. According to Simone de Beauvoir, she's the perpetual other, because if marriage goes away, the entire society is going to fall apart. So she has to be other. She has to be given to someone else. Gift giving, kanyadan. She has to be given to someone else to create that tribal alliance. So one way she's going, the other way prestige is coming, lands coming, alliance is being created. So that's the whole concept of marriage. It's the tribal bondage between two tribes, groups of men, for the purpose of exchange of women, to create kinship structure. So kinship is not a natural biological thing. It's a cultural thing imposed on the fundamental biology, which is the incestuous desire. So this is Simone de Beauvoir. Then, of course, she said that woman in modern society is also oppressed economically, culturally, lack of education, lack of opportunity, etc. All these are there, but that's the fundamental definition of a woman, not one who has femininity, because the concept of femininity changes. But this otherness, that she is not my own, she has to be transacted, she has to be othered. And the other has to be brought in and made into our own, where this tribe gives their daughter here and brings their sister or daughter to their own. So the one who is the other becomes my own. That's the whole concept on which, that's the substructure of society. So see how in this theory, Marx's base and superstructure changes. According to Marx, the base is modes of production and relations of production. In this case, it's this exchange of women, the kinship structure that holds the entire society together. And of course, it is based on the othering of women. So that's more or less Simone de Beauvoir. Next, I'm going to go into psychoanalytic theory. Namaskar.